everyone, it's Sydney. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm not gonna lie, I don't really have a plan for really what I'm gonna talk about today, but sometimes it's just best for me to sit in front of the camera and just start talking and see what comes out. Actually, that's pretty much what I do every time. I'm sure a lot of my subscribers probably won't watch this for some reason, like the ones where I'm trying to give like life advice don't do as well, but I'm still going to keep making them and posting them because even if just one person sees it and takes something away from it, that makes it worth it for me. Honestly, I truly believe that like when the student is ready, the teacher appears, and maybe one of my videos can be that for you and teach you something new, make you think of something in a new, more positive light. And yeah, I just feel like for me, when I was going through a really tough time, the right resources came to me at the right time through other YouTubers when I started really getting into looking up the law of attraction, because I was like, I need to make a change in my life. Like, I might as well give this a go, give it a shot. And it really like truly worked for me. And this morning I've just been thinking back on like when I first got to prison and how positive I was. It's so easy to be upset at the world and feel like life is unfair and make yourself the victim in situations that don't necessarily play in your favor, but you can always switch it around and make it play in your favor. It's just all about how you look at it. And that was really cool. So I started to this morning just look back at like the notes I took when I first got in, and like it was before I was even had like a notebook to journal, so I literally wrote it on like scrap pieces of paper. Maybe I'll read this for you guys and just see, because it just like made me really happy that like this isn't just all in my head, like I genuinely did feel this way. So this piece of paper that I wrote was like while I was still in receiving, which is like where you go before you actually get classified and put into like minimum security or max security. I was in minimum security, but this was like all before that. And basically you have like no freedom at all. You have to be like locked in your cell pretty much all day. You get like an hour out in the morning and one in the evening, and then we had like an hour to go to the gym. Some days they just wouldn't let us go, and they could just do that if they didn't want to deal with us. So basically all I was doing in there was like reading a bunch of books. It was before I was even allowed to have books sent into me, so I had to find them in like the little library shelf that they just had in receiving. But luckily I did find some like pretty cool self-help books, and I'll tell you about them later in this video because I really liked them. And if you're like quarantined right now, I encourage you to use this time to really work on yourself, learn something new, grow, and just try to make yourself a little bit of a better person. So I'll give you some books that I read in prison that I recommend, but I'm just gonna read this first. So I went into like jail and then got moved to prison mid-July, July 15th, and I wrote this on July 30th, so I had literally been locked up for like 2 weeks. And it says, I came in here knowing that I was here for a reason. I dropped the whole attitude of, I don't belong in prison, I don't need to go, I already learned my lesson. I accepted that there was a reason I was put in this situation, and I wasn't going to get what I needed out of it by being stubborn. I looked on the bright side. I came up with all the possible benefits that could come from this. I chose to look at the good rather than the downside, because what you think about is what expands. And that is so true. Like, what you put your energy and your focus on is what you will get more of. I believe that there are lessons and blessings that come from every so-called negative situation. W. Clement Stone said, every adversity has the seed of an equivalent or greater benefit. I'm going to read that part again. Every adversity, every struggle that you go through, every bad thing in life has the seed of an equivalent or greater benefit. And that is so true. Like, good things do come from your hardships and your struggles as long as you open your mind and allow it to be that way. Apparently I still have the same mindset, because the next thing I wrote was, that is so true. Although this is still the beginning of my sentence, this experience has had a noticeable positive impact on my attitudes and outlook on life. Like, can you believe that? I literally said that. I'm in prison. I'm like sitting in a cell the energy in there is like off the hook, negative, crazy, bad, like scary. And I'm saying this has had already like such a positive influence on my life. It's just amazing how much like a positive mindset can affect you and like affect how you go about things. There are obvious downsides to being labeled a felon and going to prison, but I choose not to dwell on those. Instead, I am only entertaining the positive outcomes. I learned not to worry about the little and insignificant misfortunes. And that is one thing that I really took away from being in prison and like being around people that have so much harder lives than me. I was like, I can't believe that I actually used to complain about the things that I used to complain about, like that were so small and insignificant in the large scheme of things. And yes, it's still okay to have feelings and be upset even over minor things, but sorry, I just like pushed the table. But just keep in mind that like there's more to life than complaining about the small things that we have no control over. Or the things that we do have control over and we just spend our time complaining about it rather than actually taking action and making a change. I've been given the opportunity to read it all day uninterrupted. I'm learning and applying the tips that will allow me to be successful. I also have a lot of time to figure out what I really want out of this one shot at life. Really think about my values, set goals, and visualize what kind of future will make me genuinely happy and fulfilled. And that's something that I spent a lot of time doing in prison, because especially when I was in receiving and I was just sitting all day long in my, like on my bunk, and like all I had to do was read or just like sleep and like couldn't really move. It was like such a tiny cell. So I spent a lot of time like writing down goals for the year, goals for my time in prison, goals for my life 5 years from now, goals for my whole life. Like something that I really enjoyed doing is thinking like, okay, put yourself in the mindset of you are 90 years old on your deathbed. What do you want to see when you look back at your life? That always puts things in perspective to me, because, or do it like write a letter to yourself at this age that you are now, as if you are 90 years old on your deathbed or whatever. For me, I don't want to look back and live a life of like holding back or worrying about what people think and like not fulfilling my own dreams because I am worried about failure or what it's going to look like to other people. You know, I want to make the absolute most out of this life and just live it to the fullest, especially after I just spent so much time locked up. Well, not so much time, I was in there for like 8 months, but it was enough for me to be like, I'm never wasting another minute of my life. You know, like I really want to go out there, and anything that I want to do, I'm gonna make it happen. And I guess this is a good segue into talking about like our self-limiting beliefs. Like there are so many things, even if we're not consciously aware of it, ingrained into our subconscious that we have been told since we were little, or that things that we have come to believe about what we are capable of. And we set these limits on ourselves as if like a certain life isn't attainable for us. Like it's never going to happen. It's never going to be possible. And that's absolutely not true. Anything in the world is possible. We live in an infinite, abundant universe. All that matters is that you believe it can happen. If you believe it can happen, it will happen. And this just reminds me of a book that I read while I was in receiving. It's called If You Think You Can by TJ Hoisington, I think is his last name. I don't know how to pronounce it, but it is just like it's a really short read. I 100% recommend you read it. It's just filled with like inspiring stories about people that like never gave up, and like very, very successful people, and like how hard they had to try. Like they had their vision, they were set on that vision, they believed that they could achieve it, and it doesn't always come on the first try or the second or the 15th. But if you keep pursuing it and you truly believe that you are capable of doing it and that it is possible, you can do it. When I was reading it, I took like little notes actually that I found, and I'll just like read you some of the notes that I took. Bullet point says, everything you have right now in your life is a reflection of what you expect to have. Exactly. So like if you believe that you can be a millionaire and you know that this is possible, it's more likely to happen if you work towards it than if you are working towards and like dreaming of becoming a millionaire, but constantly telling yourself it's never gonna happen. I don't think that that's possible for me. And that's just one example. Like, money is such an easy example to use, but same goes for just like your mindset and your attitude and how you feel in life. Clearly, I knew 2 weeks into being in prison that I could make the most out of my stay and remain positive and happy even being in prison. And because I believed that it so strongly and was so confident in that, that's what I manifested. And now I get to share that with you guys, which I think is so awesome. Another thing I wrote down from reading that book says, once we believe something is true, we begin gathering evidence to support that belief. We then unconsciously make those beliefs our personal truth and reality. In the book, it also talks a lot about like using the word can't and like negative self-talk like that and why you shouldn't use it. It's really inspiring. There's so many just like little stories that really make you believe that you can do and accomplish anything. Of all the books that were on the library little shelf in receiving, I found this one book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and I was like, okay, that seems like my cup of tea. Like, I'm here to read self-help books. That's what I want to read. It's like a totally famous book. I can't remember the author right now. Let me see if I wrote it down somewhere. I can't find it at the moment. I'll write it down right here. It's another one that I recommend. First, it talks about like looking in at yourself and how to be effective in your own self, and then in relationships, and then going on to like leading groups of people. So that's something that I'm really interested in because I really enjoy learning about like good leadership, management, stuff like that. But the first section about self was really inspiring because it talks about like how you act according to your values. So it kind of has you decide like what your true core values are, and that you want to act from a values-centered life rather than money-centered or work-centered or spouse-centered. It goes through like all of these different things that people tend to center their life around that are important, but they are not the things that you should be surrounding your whole life and your whole mindset around. You should be acting according to your core values. Another really amazing thing that I took away from that book is he talks about Viktor Frankl, who was a survivor of a Nazi death camp during the Holocaust. Viktor Frankl actually has a book. It's called Man's Search for Meaning. I haven't read it because I am such an empath. Like, I really feel what other people feel, and I just know that that would literally destroy me because it's so sad. But in the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, it talks about Mr. Frankl's story and how even through everything that he was going through, the incredible tragedy and terror and horror that was his life, he came up with this theory of the last of the human freedoms. And basically what it is that no matter what you can't control going on around you or happening to you, you can always control how you let it affect you. That's one freedom that can never be taken away from you. Even if you have no control over the things that are happening to you or in your environment, you can always choose how you respond to it. And that is something that was really inspiring for me to read in literally my first week being in prison, because first of all, I was like, if this man can be so positive and shed so much light on such a terrible situation, a million billion times worse than what I'm going through, how I have absolutely no right to be upset and be playing the victim and letting this situation affect me in a negative way. It's just not gonna happen. So that really inspired me, and I kept that in my head my whole way through. Anytime things got tough, anytime I was being disrespected or treated unfairly or was angry about the stupid rules and circumstances that I was put under, that was one thing that I always remembered, is that I have at the very least the choice to choose how I let it affect me. One quote from that said, like, between stimulus and response, man has the freedom to choose. That is one thing that I really encourage you to take away from this, if anything at all, is that anytime you are going through something that feels unfair or not right and you have absolutely no control over it and you're upset, just remember that at the very least you can choose how you let it affect you and your emotions. I don't want to go on for too long in this video today. I was going to talk about some other books that I read, but I read so many books in prison, so if you are interested in hearing more about just like what I learned throughout my experience through these different resources and my suggestions for which books you should read, I am so happy to make this like a series. I'm thinking about calling it like prison positivity or like peace in prison. If you guys have any recommendations, I'll probably like choose one to make for this video, but it's so easy to change it, so I would love to hear your guys' recommendations in the comments for what you think I should call this little series. I already kind of talked about meditation and all the benefits that it has given me and just why you should start meditating basically, but I also really want to talk about like mindfulness and gratitude, like I said, the books that I read in prison, and just other tips for living a better, happier life. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Please give it a thumbs up if you did, and if you are not already subscribed, I would love if you would do that. Please, thank you. Have a wonderful day. I hope that you are staying positive and happy and safe and healthy, and I'll see you guys next time.